Ian Robertson, should a politician ever have two jobs?
Absolutely not. I'll be very clear about this. I think if you want to be the MP for your constituency, I think you need to know the constituency, you need to be local, you need to be dedicated, you need to have your one single focus should be helping people. It shouldn't be independence, it shouldn't be helping your buddies in Westminster. It should be about the people of the constituency. No single job is more important than that, and that's why I would dedicate myself to that if I was elected as the MP.
So the same should apply to Mingus Campbell, QC MP?
Well, I think that's a matter for Mingus Campbell in terms of his own practice. I've made my decision.
But he's wrong, isn't he, given what you've just said?
Given my opinion, I think that Mingus Campbell should consider that in his own way. But what I'm saying is that as the Glasgow East by-election candidate, that's my commitment to the constituency. Mingus Campbell represents another constituency, can make his own decision on that, Gary. You're asking me a very direct question. I'm giving you a 100% answer, which is more than my colleagues, certainly the two in the middle of this debate. 100% MP for the East End of Glasgow, that will be my sole purpose.
So, let's just address this question. Should an MP ever have, or a politician ever have two jobs?
Well, I think the answer to that is, what does the electorate want? And the electorate in the north of Scotland clearly decided that they did want Alex Salmond because they think of him so highly. And I'm asking a question. I'm not saying what the electorate should decide, but I'm just saying to the electorate in the East End of Glasgow, would you rather have an MSP and an MP, two voices for the East End, or would you just rather have one voice?
So you clearly think it's wrong for a politician to have two jobs?
I think, given the challenges of the East End, it would be better to have two voices for the East End.
So it's wrong. I just wanted to double check with you. It's wrong to have two jobs.
That's what we said last week.
I said I want the electorate just to consider, is it better to have one voice or is it better to have two voices? And I would have thought in most cases, when you take a player off a football team, you normally take it back up to 11. So I'm just suggesting to the East End, or the people of the East End of Glasgow, wouldn't it be better to have two voices?
But can you see why some people might see a huge helping of hypocrisy in your position, given Alex Salmond's situation?
Well, people who know me don't generally call me hypocritical, and what I'm just trying to emphasise is that it's really up to the electorate to decide. If the electorate want one person doing 10 jobs, well, that's up to the electorate. That's happened before. But the electorate of the north of Scotland clearly wanted Alex Salmond because they respected him so much. And I would just suggest that maybe the East End has got so many challenges that we need a full-time MSP and a full-time MP.
Margaret Curran, in a constituency where a lot of people don't have one job, how do you defend having two?
Well, I can't pretend, Gary, that this is a career move that I had planned for some time and I was trying to dupe the electorate in some way.
Well, just resign from Holyrood.
Well, what I wanted to do was...
I'll fight the by-election.
I wanted to... Excuse me, if I could have a shot here. I mean, in some ways, I agree with Councillor Mason, because what I'm saying is I'm putting myself to the electorate and saying this is the kind of plan I have for the short term. I would be honest and say I don't think it's sustainable in the long term. But
what is the long term? We're talking 3 years potentially. You have two jobs.
But the constituency I've got at the moment is entirely within the new Glasgow East seat that I'm fighting for on the 24th of July.
Yes, indeed. But you can't be in two places at once because you'd be expected to be at Westminster and Holyrood.
But sometimes the timetables shift. I intend to be active in both parliaments in the short term.
3 years you would have this dual mandate.
Can I tell you? I mean, I do accept there'll be some shift in my responsibilities at the moment. For example, I'm a member of the Shadow Cabinet, and I give an enormous amount of commitment to that and work very hard at that. But I do think, and I could never be as vain as Alex Salmond, but I do think I've got a track record in the East End. I would be a full-time advocate for the East End.
Well, why not just tell people how long you would hold this dual mandate for? 3 years. 3 years.
Because what I would want to do is, if elected, and again, I would have to make it clear, I take absolutely nothing for granted, and I'm out there to work very hard. The vibes are good, and I'm heading in the right direction, but I'm taking nothing for granted. I would discuss that with the local community, I would discuss that with the local party, and I wouldn't spring anything on anyone. But I'm honestly, with the greatest respect to everyone, and put myself forward honestly, and that's the criteria. As people have said, it's been done before. It is not without precedent, and I would not do it if I didn't think I could deliver it. And believe me, that's what I'm
John Mason, is your willingness to fight a by-election in Baillieston if Margaret Curran stands down a concession of defeat?
Exactly, thank you. You got before me.
No, I don't think so. We're fighting to this to win, and I'm not satisfied coming second. I want to win this, and we believe we can. It's a very unusual set of situation in the East End at the moment. We've got a popular SNP government in Holyrood. We've got a very unpopular government down in Westminster. And with the things like the high fuel prices, the high gas, the high electricity, this is a chance not to change the government, but to send a message to the government that they've got to wake up. They've got to wake up, and it needs a voice that will speak out, not part of the establishment.
OK, I just want to move on to a couple of other issues before we finish. Britain's most senior military officers confirmed to the BBC today that troops will remain in Iraq next year. Of course, we were told in April that there'd be a reduction, and then all of that has changed. Ian Robertson, ultimately, it looks as though we're not winning in Iraq, we're not winning in Afghanistan.
Yes, I mean, you mentioned Sir Mingus Campbell earlier on in the programme, and he's been a great spokesman for our party on this issue. We've advocated for a long time that the war was obviously a mistake, and I think that's the consensus opinion at the moment. What we have to do is withdraw our troops. I'm not very happy to hear that that's not going to happen as soon as it possibly could.
Well, that's because the situation's unstable, so you would just pull them out right now?
No. We've never said that. We've always said that we support what the troops are doing, and we're very much behind our troops in that part of the world. What we're saying is we do that in a phased way, but we don't delay the decision, we don't delay discussing it, and we don't delay thinking about it. So I'm very upset to hear that we're not making progress on this issue, because I think it's to the benefit of the people of Iraq. It's certainly to the benefit of the troops that are out there and their families at home. But we must discuss this issue. We can't shelve this and we can't ignore it. So we've always been saying that something has to be done.
And Davina Rankin, the Tories have been shoulder to shoulder, as it were, with Labour on this particular issue. It looks as though things aren't moving as fast in Iraq as was previously thought. We know that there have been real problems in Afghanistan. The number of deaths of military personnel has risen dramatically in recent weeks. So there's a real sense that on both fronts, things just aren't working.
Things are not going as well as people would have hoped to. I think the first thing I'd like to do is to emphasise Ian's support for the troops. I mean, we fully support and send messages of support to them in both Iraq and Afghanistan, and I think that's important to emphasise. We would like to see a very much managed withdrawal from Iraq as soon as possible, but
what does that mean?
As you
when
said,
is as soon as possible?
Well, when the situation is stable. You said it yourself that the situation is not stable, which is
5 years, 10 years?
I can't predict what the situation on the ground will be. I'd leave that to our senior military advisers, plus the Iraqi government, to advise us when it would be safe to withdraw, because we don't want to leave the Iraqis in a dangerous situation. And likewise in Afghanistan, a lot of effort is going into rebuilding the schools that the Taliban destroyed to allow school children, school girls to be educated. And these are important policies that have to be put in place. But at the same time, we do need to have a scheduled, managed, phased withdrawal that will not expose the Iraqis or those living in Afghanistan to more danger. We're in there now. We'd like to see a full review of why we went into this situation in the first place, find out why decisions were made, find out why things are not progressing as fast as possible. But we need a phased, managed withdrawal. And it can't be done in a rush.
You supported the war, and you did so publicly in the Parliament. It looks on the face of it as though the Iraq adventure is really going badly wrong now.
Well, I couldn't do anything other than deny that I'm deeply troubled by the situation in Iraq. I did at the time, I would have to say, I was persuaded of the evidence that
in hindsight, that was wrong.
Well, with hindsight, it has taught us a great deal, and I wouldn't try and pretend. It's easy for me to sit here now and say and condemn everybody who made the decision at that time, but we all know what the intelligence reports were telling us. But there is no doubt the situation is very different from what I certainly anticipated it to be. And I don't think if you're human, you can watch the TV at night and see the images and not be moved by them. I think it is certainly very difficult. I mean, I would absolutely endorse what people have said about the troops. The troops from Scotland and from the United Kingdom are doing a superb job, and we must pay them enormous thanks and credit and respect for that. But nonetheless, there is no doubt there are difficulties. I do think Afghanistan is slightly different from many of the points that Davina has made, in terms of, just the excesses of the Taliban and just what's happening there. But, it is deeply troubling. I would
what we are being told from the military advisers is that because the situation is so volatile, all the more reason for British troops to stay there, John Mason.
We shouldn't have been in Iraq in the first place, and I'm afraid this is one of the issues where we see Labour and the Tories and really no space between them to really notice that they are part of this mindset in London that we should be going round interfering in other countries. Now, it's one thing if the United Nations approves it, as in Afghanistan.
But we're there now, aren't
exactly.
We? So
well,
we have to deal
there
with the
now.
reality of the situation.
We have to take it out. I mean, there have been various suggestions, and one is to replace the Western troops, because there's clearly a lot of anti-Western feeling. But the idea of getting in, say, more Asian or African troops, which might be more acceptable as an interim basis, I think is one that should be looked at.